Greetings, magical mages and spiritual sages. Welcome to the Age of the Mage podcast, and this is episode 69. Yes, it's called Let's Talk Dragons. Are dragons your magical allies? So, just a couple podcasts ago, we talked about magical allies, spiritual guides, galactic star family connections, things that are not in this 3D realm, beings, helpers, assistants, guides, guardians, these types of beings that are in the invisible realms, that each of us may feel an affinity for. And we definitely are individuals and we're drawn to different types of beings. This could be due to our spiritual overlays, which I did cover in a previous podcast, and I will list that down below in the description. It's likely that many of our close feelings that we have to these other beings do come from spiritual overlays. So that's one important concept. But we also may find ourselves in today's world on Earth at this time with our destinies aligned with certain types of other beings that are also sharing parts of our destiny with us. Perhaps we have a mission to fulfill, and that mission aligns with others who are also in the process of bringing about circumstances that would overlap with our own mission. So it could be that you might even have allies and contacts with other beings that normally you do not align with, or you may have no history with, you may have no natural uh, curiosity about. This happened to me when I moved to my current property. I've always been fascinated in everything paranormal, everything supernatural, everything esoteric. It's just been a lifelong interest of mine to explore these hidden realms, of course. But as all of us, we have our favorites. We have areas that are more appealing and we dive into and we research. And then we have other areas that we might neglect simply because they are not our primary interest, or we don't have at least to our knowledge, we don't have a karmic tie to, we don't have a current lineage, connection with, these types of things. And when we moved to our current property, I'm trying to remember, it was really quite soon after we moved, I had an experience that has now turned out to be um, a sighting of a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch or whatever you prefer to call these beings, something along those lines for sure. And then some more things developed and a little bit more validation happened. And my goodness, I have to admit, I'm sharing space with the Sasquatch. Sasquatch. I'm not sure I'm saying that exactly right. All right. So anyway, the point though is that now I am developing a relationship with these beings. And yet, prior to them entering into my life by us sharing a space and perhaps now moving into a time where our missions might overlap, prior to that time, this was just not one of the areas that I pursued. I didn't follow too much information about the Bigfoot searches or the Yeti. It just wasn't on my radar. I knew of them and I had seen things here and there. But again, here it has come into my life, and now I am developing a personal interest because I'm living with these creatures, and in my case, I am very fortunate that the clan that is here is benevolent and protective. So as you can see, our lives take different twists and turns as we go along. And so we don't always know what's ahead of us, what kind of relationship will develop with, which kind of beings. But today's podcast is a little bit of a focus on dragons, dragonkin, those who really strongly identify with dragons. And the reason I feel prompted to do this podcast is because as people have found their way to modern masters through all kinds of means, all kinds of channels, all different types of attraction fields, we are seeing some patterns. And as we get to know each one of you, very often a link to dragons is revealed, or even the shifting abilities, the work with dragons, very cognizant of dragons. Um, there are even people who may have no prior direct interaction with etheric dragons, but are very interested and find themselves trying to research dragons or enjoy reading fictional, so-called fictional material about dragons that include dragons as characters. And so I guess this pattern just needs to come out in the open and not be ignored. It's certainly it's interesting to see happening. So one of my dear friends inside of our Modern Masters group and I have been talking a little bit about this, and she is certainly someone who is linked with dragons quite strongly. And we were discussing things, and I was saying, this is partly why I have chosen to share this podcast, is that she reminded me how important it is to reach out into the world and let those of you know who resonate to certain beings, to certain archetypes, that we are here for you. We welcome you, and we offer space, a protective space, a sacred and special space where you can come and share these things about you, and also meet others that share that particular affinity with you, and have start building relationships and discussions with people. And so, because this pattern of those of you with dragon linkages is coming up so often, we thought, hey, this is the place to start. Now, I got a big telepathic push a few weeks ago about calling in protectors and guardians, earth guardians and magical protectors. And there was a great response there. And I know that many of you feel an alignment with that role, with that function, with that archetype. So let's just look for fun at those of you who might share this protective energy and also find yourself interested or linked or connected to dragons and those majestic beings. And so then we put the two together. Are you related or have dragon lineage, and also find that you have very strong protective instincts? Now, the protector, I call the guardian inside of our magical archetypes. We have 9 magical archetypes. They're the warrior, the healer, the guardian, the sage, the commander, the oracle, the keeper, the builder, and the weaver. So when we think about archetypes, we tend to think of our roles or our functions. When we think about our links or connections to something like dragons, or, for some others it might be a galactic star family, for others it might be dolphins, for some it might be angels. But when we think of this connection we have to a specific group of beings, and most likely etheric beings that we're talking about right now, these otherworldly species, they could be any of those archetypes. In other words, you could have the warrior archetype very strongly within you, and then also have a very strong tie to the dragon kin, the dragon beings. You could have the healer archetype very strong, resonating within you, and be a dragon at the same time, or be linked with dragons. So this is definitely open when you land on a species or a type of being that you relate to. For some reason, it's in your past, it's in your future, it's a special interest. Do keep in mind that inside that species, all the archetypes will manifest. So there are definitely no limitations when it comes to how the dragon magic works or how it manifests. But in talking to my friend, we did find a few things that dragon people tend to have in common. They're motion oriented, they're passionate, they're dynamic. So we find that dragon energy really makes people want to get up and go. It fills them up with purpose. And in our case, we tend to focus on merging and helping humanity merge onto this most benevolent, most beneficial timeline that's right before us now. And so we find ourselves with many people working with light forces to help raise this frequency. That is not to say that shadow work Shadow work magic is not a very important part of the process as well. So we all have light and dark. We all have this balance with us. And there could be a dragon warrior who is actually a shadow warrior, but who is a light healer. So there's all types of combinations that we could see as we start developing more and more information and sharing that information about these archetypes and about the beings and the connections we could very likely have with them. So when you draw on dragon energy, you really draw on some fierceness, some ferocity. We find also that dragons are quite steadfast. They can be very loyal. They are tied very often. They're territorial, right? They're tied to landscapes and their homes and protecting their young, protecting their goodies, right? The gold, the dragon hoard, protecting those things that they find valuable. And so if you have this dragon energy, you may exhibit some of these characteristics and see this about yourself. But these are wonderful things to have when they are applied in the right way. And when we draw upon dragon powers to do magical work, it can just take your work up, up, boost it many levels. So being aware of these kinds of magical allies that we have natural connections to is no small thing. It's a very powerful alliance. And so we wanted to have some fun today and put this out there and share this dragon energy with you and recognize those of you who might hear this and invite you to investigate more and visit with us and comment and ask questions. And if this is something that you feel about yourself, we'd love to have your input. We definitely feel that the dragons will be making a very big contribution to our earth and to humanity as we move forward. And so we thank you for being among us, and we respect you, and we welcome you. And so I will leave it there for today, and I will be back shortly, but we'll say goodbye for now.